Hello, everyone. This is the voice of the Jackmeister, as I'm sure you all know. Here I am with a little something different. First off, I hope you are all doing well. I must do that favorite YouTuber thing where we apologize for not uploading very often, though I don't define myself by a YouTuber in the strict requirements that requires for you. I have not been uploading very much, as I'm sure you have all noticed to your chagrin. There's a couple of reasons for that. Mainly right now, my main projects for the time I have for researching and writing are for various scripts I am doing for kings and generals. That is including video scripts. So the new Mongol army series we started, the various campaign episodes, as well as the podcast series. So I'm writing a weekly podcast for them, basically going through the history of the Mongol Empire. At the time I am recording this, we just released an episode on the Toluid civil war between Kublai and Erik Burka. I'm also doing interviews with historians on the Mongol Empire through that. And I would recommend you check that out because I put a lot of work into that. I think it's very good, but, I'm full of myself. I will put a link in the description. I am also going to be going to Vienna, Austria in a few weeks, hopefully by the end of the month. I have been accepted into a master's program in history there. I will be writing on the Mongols, Nogai Khan specifically, which leaves not a lot of time for our regular style of videos. It takes a while to do the artwork for those. It takes a while to edit because I'm not a very techie guy, and my laptop has so much cat hair. If I need to take it in to be repaired, I have to take it to the vet. It doesn't run very fast, and Lightworks barely runs on this, but I will try to put stuff together. In the meantime, I'm hoping to start a slightly different format here, using Zoom, which I'm certain you are all probably sick of already, since now we've been living off of it for months now. I had to get up at 4:30 a.m. this morning to talk on Zoom with people in Austria, or Hungary rather, which was not a lot of fun. Well, it wasn't too bad. But there is a screen sharing and recording option via Zoom. So what I'm hoping to do is use it to talk about research and online resources available for those of you wishing to study the Mongols, learn more about the Mongols or other inter-Asian nomadic empires. Once I am in Vienna, I hope to use this to talk about the kind of research I will be doing. Use this to talk about primary sources, all sorts of fun things. You can let me know how well this actually works, if there's a more efficient way to set this up, but we will see. I'm just completely winging it, because why not, eh? Our first thing I'd like to point out to you is something I found while researching the last video I did on the armor and weapons of the Timurids. That link will be in the description if you want. Essentially what it is the best single online resource I have found, or online collection of Ilkhanid era artworks. What we see happen during the Ilkhanate, that is the division of the Mongol Empire in what is now Iran, Iraq, the Caucasus, ruled by the descendants of Hulagu Khan. The Ilkhans, of course, converted to Islam in the 1290s, although there was the brief reign of one Muslim Ilkhanid ruler prior to that, Tegur Ahmed. And they adopted sort of aspects of Iranian culture, trappings of Iranian rulers. As part of this, we see sort of a flourishing of official historiography, we can call it. That is, we have individuals in the Ilkhanate on the patronage of the Ilkhan himself or the nobility, the elite, creating official histories explaining and justifying Ilkhanid rule and sort of putting it into the great swath of Iranian history, as well as a lot of individuals undertaking these things in their own right. As a part of this, we also have a wonderful flourishing of illuminated manuscripts. That is, images like you should be seeing on screen right now. Specifically, why this all of a sudden picks up under the Ilkhans is debated. This was sort of starting in the 12th century and was known prior to that, but it's nothing quite compared to the richness we see in these late 13th century, early 14th century manuscripts. I think personally, the explanation I always find quite humorous is that this was happening because the Mongol rulers of the Ilkhanate couldn't read or write very well, so they liked to look at the pictures. I don't know. I somewhat suspect the person who suggested that was being a little fascist, tongue-in-cheek, rather. Michael Hope, who I actually interviewed for the Kings and Generals podcast, and that will be coming out in the coming weeks, suggested it was a matter of resources. The Ilkhans were tremendously wealthy and could basically get into gear a huge amount of manpower and cover the costs and the materials necessary to produce so many of these manuscripts, so many of these illustrations. There are, not this one on screen particularly, but there is evidence of influence from Chinese style artworks. I'll see if I can show you guys one over the course of this. So we have one of the clearest indicators of the cross-cultural contacts made available during Mongol domination of the Eurasian continent. It's a wonderful resource. It's for those of you wishing to learn about, say, Mongol armors. See if I can get this a bit bigger. My internet connection is garbage, so I don't know. I might have just killed it here. Oop, what's it doing? Anyways, it shows a lot of Mongol armors. There it is. Come on, baby. There we go. Hit that. I think there's something to annotate. Okay, this. So this is indicative of the sorts of there we go. Indicative, sorry, of what we see here. First of all, clearly Mongols, clear Asian features, this sort of thin facial hairs, very common on these fellows. The monolids, lamellar armor, or that might be. Sometimes this could be laminar. I don't know. This actually isn't the best place to look at it. Hey, come on here. Okay, this looks like, yeah, laminar. Mongolian helmets, the bows here. You can see the back of the armor here. Down here, more fellows, these lovely quivers. These tunics they're wearing over top of on over top of their armor. You have a trebuchet here. Looks like some fellows operating the trebuchet. Is this the one? No, this isn't the one with the drums. This is depicting the siege of Baghdad, by the way, 1258, Hulagu's sack of the city. But it's fantastic detail that I imagine many historians of earlier epochs must just be so jealous of what we have access to. This in the center of the screen here. This is a pontoon bridge going over the Tigris River. These are boats. On here, this black thing here, and a bridge going over top of it. The walls of Baghdad, some women staring out at the soldiers. This is phenomenal, and there's so much of this artwork. So this website, it's going to be linked in the description, so you guys can check it out yourself. See if I can go to the links here and show you guys a bit more of this. Oh, come on. Here we go. So these particular folios here are from the Jami al-Tawarik of Rashid al-Din. Rashid al-Din was the vizier of the Ilkhanate from the reign of Ghazan Khan into the reign of Ghazan's nephew, brother, Uljetu. No, I got that wrong. His nephew, Abu Sa'id, he gets accused of poisoning the previous Ilkhan, Uljetu, and then gets executed during Abu Sa'id's reign. But anyways, for about 20 years, he's one of the top figures of the Ilkhanate, becomes immensely wealthy. He's a physician, historian, and he writes for us the Jami al-Tawarik. Well, whether he personally wrote it or ordered a bunch of people to compile it kind of thing is a little debated, but he gets the overall authorship. Series editor, we might call him. And it is a phenomenal universal history, a compendium of chronicles. It describes a huge swath of Islamic history. It alleges to provide a history of the Franks of Europe and China, and since the creation of man to the present. But for historians of the Mongol Empire, it is among our most important sources. First of all, as vizier of the Ilkhanate, Rashid was in a fantastic position to be well educated about events there, access to documents, internal matters of the Ilkhanate, close contact with the Ilkhans and other top officials of the empire. He was also very well informed of events in Yuan China, that is the section of the Mongol Empire ruled by Kublai Khan and his descendants. As one of Kublai's judges, Bola Jingsheng had been sent to the Ilkhanate, was waylaid getting back to the Yuan Empire, so he stayed in the Ilkhanate and spoke with Rashid al-Din extensively and provided him just phenomenal information. Like, we are incredibly fortunate to have this survive for us. Rashid went to great efforts to make sure it survived, although unfortunately only a few manuscripts made it through the ages to get to us today. The Compendium of Chronicles also features extensive illustrations. And they are amazing. It's hard to provide a synopsis of all of them. I don't know how well the titles here are showing up on screen, but you have sort of events from earlier Islamic history, the Quran, Moses hearing God's voice here, various prophets, and it goes right up to the present at the time. Oh, discusses the Ghaznavids, lots of artwork of the Ghaznavids. Essentially, if you are looking online at historical pictures of the Mongols, there's a very good possibility what you are seeing originated in a copy of the Compendium of Chronicles or another source from the same period. A lot of these manuscripts sort of flourish from about 1290 over the 14th century and sort of take on various regional versions from the Timurid period onwards, and we get after that distinct Safavid Ottoman styles. But often a lot of the imagery deliberately harkens back to what was popularized during the Ilkhanate. Here, this is a lovely one. I was going to say, guess who it is, but I guess there's a big title right there saying it. This is the birth of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. Of course, many of you are likely aware of the prohibition in Islam of depicting the Prophet, the caliphs. In some sects, it's against depicting any living things whatsoever. That it's a sin. But this, you must not think of this as some sort of inherent property of Islam, that it's just been right from the death of Muhammad to present some single monolithic belief system where everything has been adhered to the T directly from the Quran. This is from a copy of the Jami al-Tawariq, early years of the 14th century, early 1300s. Written for the Ilkhans. The Ilkhans were Muslims at this time. And here they are depicting the birth of the Prophet Muhammad. This little cutie right here. There's Muhammad himself. The angel, I forget what the angels, we just translate them as. I don't remember what they're actually called in Islam. Or in Arabic, sorry. It's the Prophet's mother. And what's fascinating about this is that this specific style of imagery is actually based off of Christian imagery of the birth of Christ. And here it is being used to depict Muhammad. It's, the people who act like the medieval world was just shut off borders from everyone, no cross-cultural contacts. They don't know anything about the medieval world, especially the Mongol Empire. Like, just lovely detail here. And it's not restricted to the birth of Muhammad, for oh man, the queue on that would have been a lot better if my internet connection was better. One of the famous episodes from Muhammad's early life, there's a repairing and cleaning of the Kaaba, which occurs. Muhammad, as a member of sort of the local nobility, the Quraysh tribe, he's involved with that. There is an argument between factions over who should put in the black stone of the Kaaba, back into its place in the Kaaba. The black stone is still extant today, speculated to be some sort of meteorite fragment or something. Actually, a whole interesting story on itself, but not the topic of today's discussion. Muhammad sorts out the issue by having the two sides place the stone in a rug, I think it is, and then it gets lifted over to the Kaaba. I forget specifically what happens. That I think Muhammad then sort of takes the stone from there and places it into the Kaaba. And this is the Kaaba, supposedly the first mosque on earth, built by Abraham, I believe. But anyways, So for all that, the Islamic State, Daesh today likes to go on about, you can't do any depictions of the Prophet in this. Well, 14th century, Rashid al-Din, a Jewish convert to Islam, serving the Ilkhans. Here is the Prophet Muhammad depicted in all his glory. Interestingly, somewhat shorter than all his fellows here, but that might just be the perspective. I think there's a couple other depictions of him as well, but this is the most famous one. So Islamic iconoclasm, verily overstated. So Rashid al-Din's work is just lovely for these depictions of early Islamic history. Which one is this one? Come on. Oh, yeah. Yeah, this is one I shared on my Facebook page for the Jackmeister. If any of you been following there. This is a great one. So these are depicting Ghaznavids, an earlier Islamic empire in Iran, Khorasan, modern Afghanistan. So earlier empire, these are events that occurred about 300 or 400 years before the compilation of Rashid al-Din's work. And yet everyone is depicted, or at least all the important figures are depicted as Mongols, physically Mongolian features, or just general Central Asian Turkic features for the time, in Mongolian style armor. This is, as my friend Marco Boldrini would point out, Hudesitu Huyag, Lamino laminar armor. That is, I don't know if these annotations actually show up all that well. Huh. Anyways, it is rows of lamellar with laminar, that is leather, leather bands, mixed in between, covering the lacing between the lamellar rows. So it still is flexible, but offers improved protection because generally in lamellar armors, the exposed lacing, it's a weak point. You can cut those. You see in modern tests with lamellar, the lamellar plates themselves don't tend to fail, but the lacing, which holds these various plates together, that's what fails on the impact. So lamino-lamellar, a more effective secure armor. These fellows, this fellow here, and this fellow on the elephant, are wearing Hatongu Dechs. Hatanga Del, I think it's pronounced. I have to apologize. I don't speak Mongolian. I've tried to learn a couple things, but it's only so much time in a day. So this is cloth as hard as steel, I think it translates to. It's sort of a Gambazin brigandine type of armor. So it'll be in the 12th century, so during the rise of Temujin, generally it's just thickly layered felt armor, which would go over the regular del. Over the 13th century, you see the armor increasingly reinforced with metal plates inside the jacket, essentially making a brigandine. It is very common in these Ilkhanate artworks. It's also depicted in Japanese manuscripts depicting the Mongol invasion of Japan. You can tell it's the brigandine because it'll have these sorts of rivets visible. These aren't like studs. Studded armor doesn't really exist. When you see those studs sticking out, it is the rivets holding in place the metal plates inside of the jacket. Generally, it's brightly decorated. Yellow's popular. These sorts of floral flower pattern designs are very common in the Ilkhanid depictions here. A lovely mace. These might be some hooked spears here, or hooked lances. That's sort of another common Mongolian weapon of the time. But their spears used on horseback would have hooks on them for hooking people out of the saddles and pulling them out. This is a little short, so I'm not sure if it's depicting that. As I said, these are supposed to be Ghaznavids, not Mongols, but they're shown all in Mongolian armor. That's pretty typical of medieval artworks, Europe, the Islamic world to China. They don't try and show the actual historical armors. They show them wearing modern armors, because that's what they had access to for the visual references. Imagine when they do the Shakespeare plays today, and they will often show, rather than show the characters in Elizabethan or period accurate costumes, they will just show them in modern suits and jackets and things. It's the same kind of thing. It's not deliberately anachronistic. It's just a style. This is an elephant. He's on. I always loved the way his Islamic artwork at the time depicts elephants' toes. Fantastic. Guy's hairy. But it's interesting evidence for the usage of elephants, which isn't something we actually see described among the Mongols all that common in the sources. So it does show up in a couple of these manuscripts. It's also great evidence for the type of standards the Mongols used. Tugs, suldas. And these are, of course, the black. The horsehair on the top is black. Black signifies war, white signifies peace. You can see down below here the arrow or the bow case. Just a lovely design. We have a few surviving archaeological examples of these bow cases and arrow quivers, and they actually line up pretty closely with what is depicted in these artworks, although I don't think there's a lot of variation in bow cases over history, but I could be wrong there. What I always find, it doesn't really show up here so well, but they don't generally show girth straps for these saddles. You get the crupper and things, but not so much girth straps, which, I don't know, as someone who's been on the horse, I'd like to have a lot of things strapping the saddle in place so I don't fall off, but I'm not a Mongol. Anyways, this is a lovely piece. Come on. I'll go through one or two more pieces from Rashid al-Din here, then I'll show from another section. This is, as I said before, Rashid al-Din's Compendium of Chronicles, the universal history, also talks about Chinese history. What he'll do in a specific chapter, like say on his sections of the life of Chinggis Khan, he'll go through like a 10-year period of Chinggis Khan's life, and then at the end of that section so say the years covered were 1196 to 1206. So after he's covered that decade on Chinggis Khan, then he goes through here's the events of the lives of the sultans and caliphs and emperors in Iraq, Iran, Central Asia, China, and his information's pretty good. Trying to get this to go bigger. Sorry, I can't make it bigger. This is from a section describing, well, Chinese emperors. I don't think you can really tell their clothing so well. But the hats, clearly, these are influenced from the long ears on the Song Dynasty caps of the time. If you look up artwork of the Song emperors from the 13th century, this is the very similar to the style of hat they're wearing. I don't remember what they are called. On this fellow here and this fellow here, that's very distinctly, I don't remember what this one's called either. My Chinese is not very good, so I don't know the names of any of these things specifically. But if you look up, say, Qin sort of the traditional Chinese emperors, they sort of wear this rectangular hat. It goes from back to front, and from this hat is hanging, I'm not quite sure what they are. They got little doodads hanging from them. It's very hard to describe unless you have a good picture handy. And I don't want to search it up because it's going to take forever to load on my computer here. Look up First Emperor of China, and you'll probably see a sort of variation of that hat depicted. But again, which two emperors of the Qi and Liang dynasties? He doesn't have any more information on that. But again, like I'm saying, just what a fantastic resource this is. Like, this is not him making these things in a vacuum where, for instance, European artwork trying to depict Kublai Khan generally just depicts the Mongols and Kublai the same as they depict regular European armies and European kings of the given time. Here, you could only get these sorts of depictions actually knowing something about the given area. Through the cultural context, perhaps he was working off of visual references. The fact these ears don't quite go the right direction, these little bunny ears, might means he's working off of a verbal description rather than a specific visual references. But all right, which is this one? I don't remember which one this is. So, oh yes, I think I remember. Yes, this is a very famous one too. These artworks are fantastic for showing Mongolian culture. So this one is specifically depicting Ilkhans, or an Ilkhan. I don't think it's a specific one as much as just a general. But for those of you who know about the Mongol clothing styles of the 13th century, these are fantastic. So let's start this guy at the top here in his del. So the Mongolian robe, you can see, latched on the right side. The Mongolian robe ties underneath the right arm. Turkic robes tie underneath the left arm, generally speaking. You can see this is depicting the loops of the hair. So the Mongols, they would shave the head, leaving just a tuft at the forehead. The rest of the head would be bald. And then you would have these plates of hair left sort of from like the temples around to the back of the head, and it would be looped into basically two braids or two hoops behind the ears. So that's what this is showing. The Mongols of the time, a man had to wear a hat. Your hat had to be covered. These artworks are great because they show so many styles of hats. Mongols love the hats. Most of the dells, generally, they look pretty similar. But the way you show your wealth is either through a very fine dell with a lot of ornamentation on it, and through a very fine and very big hat. You can see this fellow here. Some sort of feathers coming out of the hat. You see so many varieties of these hats throughout these works here. There's another one here. Oh, this guy's arrow quiver. So these are going to be his guards. The quiver bearers, Korchi of the Keshig. These are the only ones who can wear quivers in the presence of the Khan. This is the Khan right here on a throne with his wife. Very Mongolian style throne. You have your footrests here. Sitting cross-legged on the actual seat. Sort of these panels forming the back of the throne. I'm not sure how well it's going to show up, but he has the distinct yellow pattern on his chest, over his shoulders. This is called cloud pattern. Very, very popular among the Mongols. Right through to the Timurids. There are Timurid artworks which will have the cloud pattern, have very similar hat designs. You can see similar delts. If it wasn't for the description at the bottom of the page describing it as a Timurid artwork, I would have trouble telling lots of them, or lots of the distinction between Timurid and Ilkhanid artworks. You can see underneath his arm here the ties holding the bell in place, his hat, Asian features. The wife here has a bokhta. This is the Mongolian woman's headdress, made of birch bark or around a wire frame, bronze, I think. And then they'd have tall feathers sticking out the top of the hat. It's very tall. Most medieval writers, when they see this headdress, they describe it because it's so unlike anything they've seen before. It has been argued that this tall headdress was the inspiration for the tall headdresses of European princesses in the 13th and 14th century. I don't know how true that is. I am far from an expert in European clothing. I'm not even an expert in Mongolian clothing. I just know a little bit. But that argument is made. Oh, you can see his lovely ornamented boots here. What's going on over here? More hat styles. Lots of feathers. These fellows presenting food, tribute to the Khan. Watercolors and gold on paper. So the original here, well, there's a dog. The original, it's actually a leaf worked into the page. More food. I'm not sure what the food's supposed to be. Kind of looks like pancakes, but it's not. Shouldn't have said that. More women might be the Khan's wives, might just be women of the court, i.e. other nobles' wives. Yeah, that's great. Which is this one? Oh, this is just Conquest of Baghdad again. This is the same one we looked at before. Oh, yes, the Great Mongol Shahnama. So the Shahnama is considered today the Persian national epic. So a collection of older poems and stories put together by the poet Ferdowsi in it's the 9th century. I don't remember the specific date. I have to apologize for that. But anyways, very famous today. It's a bit less obvious how much it would have been considered a national epic at the time. It would have been very popular, though. So this specific one is called the Great Mongol Shahnama, or the Demot Shahnama. You can see a little description here. So there was Georges Demot, I think he was Belgium, but he was based in Paris. He was an art dealer in the 20th century. And he found this in, I don't remember where he found it. Was it Tabriz? It's a little description here. founded in Iran at the time. And to make money off of it, what he did was cut up these artworks, as in, like, he peeled the glue off of the page, pull these artworks, glue them back together, basically so he'd have more pieces so he could make more money off of them. They've not all been found again, because a bunch of them are in private collections, but a lot of work has gone into trying to restore this thing. Georges de Motte will make most Ilkhanid art historians angry just hearing his name, because this is just a beautiful, beautiful work. It seems the patron of this was Rashid al-Din's son, Ghiyath al-Din bin Rashid al-Din. He was briefly vizier of the Ilkhanites and major power broker in sort of the final years as the state disintegrated. And you can see just how many artwork or illuminations were created for this. Like, this is, how many does he have here? He's got 58 just on this page. Like, it is mwah, chef's kiss. Sheila Blair and Linda Komarov, I think it's they wrote a book on this, The Legacy of Genghis Khan, I think it's called. Read that, get it through whatever library or university library if you can, or I have some notes on it too, because I read it quite a while ago. Like, just the work, the imagery in this work, it's phenomenal. I don't want this to be like 2 hours long, so I'm not going to show a whole bunch of it. But just two famous ones here. So, again, like we were saying earlier, the Mongols or Mongolian style armor and features is used to present historical ancient figures. The Mongol Shahnama, no exception. Mongolian armor. Well, I mean, lamellar. The Mongols didn't own the patent on lamellar, but there's a particular style of lamellar the Mongols liked. Their style, from what I understand, was a lot longer than what had been popular in the region prior, like going right down to the feet and ankles on some examples. But since the Mongols were the patrons of all of this, the Mongols like to see themselves. So this is showing Alexander the Great and his army fighting a prince in India. So in the Shahnama, what Alexander does, I don't remember the specifics of it, but he builds iron horses that spew fire, and he sends them rolling down a cliff, and it scares the Indian army, and they freak out and run away. So that's what these black figures here are supposed to represent. The iron horses. You can see sort of the hair loops, so they just use the outline of probably whatever model they used for doing these figures over and over again, and just colored them in black with gold highlights, fire coming out of them. Horses just have wheels for legs. You can see them running in. So these are the Indian soldiers. It's interesting then that the Indians are shown with dark skin, but still the steppe armor. So either based off Mongol models, or these might have specifically been based off of visual representations from the Delhi Sultanate. Maybe. The armor is very colorful, much more so than that of Alexander's army up here in the top. Perhaps that was something with the Delhi Sultanate, but that's just... so the main part of the Delhi Sultanate army would have been Central Asian Turkic soldiers, Kipchaks, but others sent into India, sold as slaves, as Mamluks, or as refugees fleeing the Mongols. So they would also fight as lightly armored horse archers. And it's sort of interesting that heavy armor is very, very common in these artworks. Sort of, it's always idealized, so that's kind of what I always figured as the explanation for that. This is, I think, my favorite one from the Mongol Shahnama. So Alexander, I forget which one's Alexander. I think it's this guy here. So Alexander, and he goes and he attacks the prince of the Indian forces in single combat. Alexander like cuts him in half or something. I forget. So here's Alexander the Great and some Indian prince. They're all in Mongolian armor, on horseback, Mongolian facial features. Like, what a dramatic image. Like, this must have been, at the time, kind of the equivalent of when people lost their mind seeing the Dark Knight in IMAX or Avatar in IMAX 3D. Like, the color, it's the bright, the distinction, the smoke. These sorts of curling smoke designs often been pointed to as that influence from the Chinese painters. The art, like, look how brightly colored his armor, like, just, it's so distinctive and eye-catching, like, it's mesmerizing. Like the horses, like, just the anatomy, it's incredibly well done. And it's worth a lot of money if you happen to have any of these copies lying around. Wonderful. Yeah, single combat of Iskander and the fur of Hind. The Great Mongol Shahnama is thought to have been composed about 1330. This is more stuff from Rashid al-Din. Lots of landscapes and environments. I don't want to go through all of that. So yes, this is the site here. Here's the various links to, well, you can see these are all of the manuscripts this site has uploaded. They're all like that. We has sort of the gallery you can click through. I have no idea what the pixel resolution is. I don't know anything about that. But it's a, what this is, like constellation stuff. It's a wonderful resource. I hope. Oh, the late 13th century, huh? Yeah. I hope some of you can find this a fine addition to your collection. You can use it for art references, your own videos, your own projects, what have you. Yeah, check that out. I'll try and do some more of these at some point. We'll be in touch. If you guys like this, let me know. If you think there's a better way I could have organized this, let me know as well. This kind of went a lot longer than I was hoping, but I just really like the manuscripts. So I'll think of some other stuff to include for this, but until next time, this is Jackmeister. I don't want to talk anymore. See ya.